Hi everyone, Sabrina here from Scrappy Tales Crafts, and today I'm going to be showing you 3 fall theme cards I created using some new products from the Not Too Shabby fall release. I will be using Pumpkin Spice Everything, Fall Gnomes, and You, Me, and Pumpkin Spice. I thought I would just go ahead and show you the 4th stamp set from the latest release, and this one is called Critter Costume Party, which is super cute, and I'll be showcasing that stamp set in a separate video. I thought today I would just focus on the fall related stamp sets, so I went ahead and stamped out each image from each of the 3 sets onto Bristol cardstock. And this cardstock is really great for watercoloring and using your Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. So that's what I decided to color in my images today. I stamped all of them out with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I clear heat embossed each image. I like to clear heat emboss whenever I'm using watercolor because the embossing powder acts as a barrier for my water to stay within the stamped lines. So even though I've been coloring with my Zigs for years now, I still do this because I am always heavy-handed with my water brush. And these images are quite small. You don't even have to pull in your water brush, but I do kind of like that I get my highlight color just by using my water brush instead of a third color. And I'm coloring in this little girl here first. She's actually really cool because she is the girl from the Not Too Shabby logo. And I'm seeing on her logo that she has brown hair, but I decided to give her black hair because I kind of imagined her as an Asian girl. So I thought it would give her some really pretty black hair. And I actually gave her blue highlights, if you can see that. I used a blue as my mid-tone. And again, I use my water brush as my highlight, and you can see a little bit of that blue peeking through her hair, which I thought was really cool. I saw that in some other video I watched recently and decided to try that out, and I like how that turned out. I went ahead and gave her some black and white leggings, and I got some of that skin color into her eyes, so I just used a white gel pen to clear them up. And for the leaves, I actually added my darker color in the center, which I usually do a center highlight, but I thought naturally leaves would be darker in the center, so that's what I decided to do, and I had my lighter color around the edges. And then you can see for the pumpkins, I went the opposite route. I decided to add my darker color around the edges of the pumpkin and have my highlight in the center. That way the pumpkin looks more rounded. I also added darker color where those lines in between the pumpkin are, just to emphasize that those are caving in. And I did color in some of my pumpkins in more of a yellow-brown tone instead of a bright orange. I'm really feeling this year, I've noticed a lot of crafters are creating white pumpkins and turquoise pumpkins, which is really cool. And when I looked up pumpkins on Pinterest, there were a lot of these yellowish turning into orange kind of pumpkins, and I was really drawn to that color. So for one of my cards, I will have more of a yellowy toned pumpkin, and then for my pumpkins over to the left of the squirrels, I will make a more traditional orange. I'm going to tone them down a little bit with a brown marker just because Zigs are super bright, and I wanted these cards to be very autumn, obviously, so I didn't want any super bright colors. So you can tone down your Zigs either with a gray or a brown marker. So if you want them to be a cooler, darker color, more muted color, I would use grays. And if you want a warmer muted color, I would add in a little bit of brown. So that's what I did with the pumpkins over to the left. If you saw my video from last week, you guys saw how I colored in those pumpkins. So I'm going to link that video down below just because this video is already super long. I decided to cut those out. I also included the squirrels from last week, but I left them in today's video just because they're super cute. And some of you guys might have not seen that video. I ended up going with the brown squirrels again, so I thought they looked better with the acorns, but the gray ones are also a great option because gray is a neutral, and I think they also go well with fall cards, so it's up to you what you prefer. So included in the Fall Gnomes stamp set is this little, I guess he's a gnome, but he looks like a little kid gnome. And I thought he was super cute. I loved his little chubby cheeks. So Again, I colored him in more muted, earthy fall colors. And now I'm moving on to another scrap piece of Bristol. I keep all of it because, as you can see, you can stamp out a whole bunch of images on a pretty small scrap of paper. I have even more scraps off to the side that I'm coloring on. So I'm going to color up a few of the mushrooms. I had in my head that I wanted to have an all gnome theme card, a coffee theme card with the squirrels, and I also wanted to incorporate a card with that not too shabby girl. So I knew I wanted the more yellowy brown pumpkins with my gnomes, so I am being conscious about how many pumpkins I decide to color orange and how many I decide to color in that pale yellow. But I definitely want to create a few fall cards with white pumpkins and that really popular teal color, which seems to be the fall color of 2020. So it's a very trendy color this year, and I want to definitely incorporate that into my future upcoming cards. So you might be wondering why I'm coloring these pumpkin cups brown. I don't know really what I was thinking. I was thinking coffee, which is brown, and for some reason it didn't register in my head that those were carved out pumpkins. So off camera I did restamp those cups and colored them in orange instead. But I did keep the brown ones because why not? I think I even used a few of them on some of my cards today. And now I'm coloring in the larger gnome from Fall Gnomes. I colored one with a purple hat, and this one I wanted to match that little baby gnome, so I gave him the same colors. I switched the colors on the hat. So on the baby gnome I had a green hat with a blue outfit. For my larger gnome, I'm going to do a blue hat with a green outfit. And his little beard, I used some warm grays. And now I'm just coloring all those little teeny tiny images from the stamp sets. Sometimes these are the most underrated stamps in a stamp set, and they oftentimes get neglected by me. But I wanted to use every single stamp from each of the 3 sets, and I was really happy that I had these little acorns and the fall leaves especially. They were great fillers to complete the finishing touches on my cards, so definitely don't neglect them. They are nice little filler pieces for your cards. So off camera I went ahead and scanned and cut all of the images that I colored. You can see I also cut out my Halloween themed images, which will be in an upcoming video, but I'm going to pile them all up and set them aside, and I'm just going to pull from them as I create my cards. That's kind of the card making style or process that I like to do. I like to color, die cut, and then assemble my cards. So that's what I decided to do. And just like I did in last week's video, I'm going to paper piece the scarves on the pumpkins as well as the coffee cups. And I thought that this was a really cute look, and the paper that I'm using to paper piece is from a Pink and Main sweater themed paper pad, which I will have linked down below. And when I saw the pumpkin spice everything stamp set, I knew it was cute, but it wasn't until I colored them that I was so impressed and so amazed by how they turned out. And I think out of all of the 3 fall sets, this one is my favorite. I also went ahead and added a green leaf to the center of my coffee cups, and I used a leaf punch to do that. So I'm going to get started on card 1 now, and I did some die cutting. I cut out a brown stitch rectangle and a smaller white stitch rectangle, and I also cut out a stitch hillside from some green pattern paper. And now I'm going to be doing some ink blending. The 3 colors I'll be using is frayed burlap, dried marigold, and antique linen. And so I'm going to grab my Picket Fence Studios blender brushes for this. I'll start with brown at the bottom, and then it's going to get gradually lighter at the top. And I do have a blender brush for each color family, so I did have a brown, orange, and yellow brush. And I do wipe them off with a paper towel in between each color. So I'm going to go over each color twice just to make sure everything is blended nicely. And then I'll grab my Distress spray bottle and add some water splatters to this background. I'll also clean up my glass mat here. And I'm using a paper towel to pick up that excess water. And so I'm going to attach this hill to the bottom of this panel. And then I'll trim off whatever is overhanging. And then I'm going to grab a few of my die cuts and create a little scene here. So I thought it would be cute to add some of the sunflowers around this pumpkin, kind of creating a cluster. And then I will have my little not too shabby girl over to the left. So I'm attaching these sunflowers to the pumpkin with my art glitter glue, and then eventually I will flip this pumpkin over and add foam tape behind it. But first I'm going to work on my sentiment. I'm going to use the You Had Me at Pumpkin Spice sentiment, and instead of using black I decided to use brown sepia from Versafine, just because I felt like it would be more softer and blend in with that background. And I like that it's just a little bit more subtle than black. So I'm going to attach that last sunflower there, and then I'll go ahead and add that foam tape. And you can see those leaves, like I said, they're really great fillers to fill in that empty space around the sentiment. And I like that they look like they're falling from a tree or something. So I'll attach those down with my art glitter glue, as well as my little girl here. And then I will pop up my little pumpkin cluster using some U-line foam tape here. The backing is a little bit difficult to take off, so I'm using my scissors to help me out. And then I'm just going to mat this onto my brown mat. And then when I was looking at it, I felt like something was missing, so I wanted to incorporate this all orange twine. I believe this was from an old Pink and Main kit. So I decided to peel back that smaller white rectangle so that I can just add the twine to this panel. And so I'm going to wrap this twine around twice, and I'm using that tape that's already behind the panel to kind of adhere the twine on the back, but I will secure that even more with a piece of Scotch tape on each side. But for now this works, it's holding it down. So I'll go ahead and tie a double bow. So I'm going to double up the twine. So here I just did a single bow and I felt like I needed it to be a little bit thicker. So I did decide to double it up. I'm going to add a little bit of art glitter glue to the center of the knot and just attach that to my twine. And then I'm not sure if I add that acorn or not. Yes, I guess I do. So I attach that, and then now I can reattach this panel onto my brown mat. Now that twine added some dimension to the back of the card, so I decided to pop it up with foam tape. And I am avoiding adding tape over that twine because I want everything to be level. So I'll go ahead and remove the backing on that tape and then pop it up. And then to embellish this card, I'm going to use some Trinity Stamp Autumn Leaf sequins. Okay, there's some dead space there, but here they are. I thought about adding some gold sequins, but ended up just going with the Autumn Leaf sequins. And included in this set are some iridescent, metallic, and glittery gold sequins. So I just grabbed a few of them and scattered them around this panel. And I will be using those autumn leaf sequins in my next card. I'll be creating a shaker card. So I'm just going to attach this panel onto a card base. And I decided to add craft behind the darker brown panel just because the white was very harsh. There was no cool colors on that card, so I thought the craft was a little bit more warm. So I did do that off camera. So now I'm going to work on my second card. I'm using this Pink and Main sweater paper pad again, and I'm going to die cut some circles from 2 of the pattern papers. And that pink paper is going to be my card panel, and then I thought I wanted that brown circle behind, but I thought it was too dark, so I think I end up changing it to a green sweater pattern instead. Here I'm flipping the different papers around, trying to figure out what I want to go with. And I'm going to add one of the cute little squirrels on top of the pumpkin, and I'm going to give him a little coffee cup. I did this in last week's card and I thought it was a cute idea, so I recycled that idea onto this card. So I decided to white heat emboss the sentiment "Thanks a Latte" onto this brown sweater circle. But like I said, I think I scratch the brown. I think I go with a green. So I did re-stamp that sentiment on some black cardstock, white heat emboss that, and then I'll trim it down to a small square. So here I am just heat setting that, and I used some Simon Says Stamp white embossing powder for that. So here you can see I recut a green stitch circle instead. I'm going to add acetate behind this panel. And I did get questions about what glue I use when adhering acetate, and I do use art glitter glue, but you do have to make sure it's completely dry before you trim around it, because that acetate will slide, so make sure it's completely dry and it will adhere it pretty well. So I just like the green better. I think it stands out more, and I thought having a lighter background would be better for my darker sequins. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere everything down now with my art glitter glue. And I don't know if you noticed this or not, but the pink pattern paper panel does have the stitching going the wrong direction. It's supposed to be up and down, but it's going side to side. At first I thought I wanted this to be a vertical card, but I felt like the pumpkin cluster looked better horizontally, and this was the only pink paper I had, so I had to just go with it, and I don't think it's a huge deal. So now I'm taking that Trinity Stamp Autumn sequin pack again, and just pouring a bunch of the sequins into the shaker circle. And included in that mix are some larger metallic leaves, which I thought was really cool. So I took a few of them out, but I left some in. I also added some gold sequins. And then I'm going to take my green circle, peel off some of that foam tape so I can adhere it down. And then that's it. Here is the completed shaker. One of those leaves was sticking to the side of my foam tape. And if you want to avoid that, you can use an anti-static tool to ensure that nothing will stick to the edges of that foam tape. But I did not do that. So a few times I had to open it up and move those sequins back inside. But ultimately I got it, and I think it turned out really cute. So I'm going to add some ATG tape to the back of that circle. I'll peel off the rest of the foam tape and then attach it to my white card base. And then that's going to complete the card. I do think I add a few sequins on the outside of the shaker. I oftentimes with my shaker cards like to pull in the same sequins inside the shaker on the outside of the card, just to pull everything together. So I'll just attach those, and then that will complete my second card. I think this one turned out really cute. And you can replace that pumpkin image and the squirrel with a different fall image from any of the 3 sets. Create like a card set with them. I think that'd be really cute. So here's a close-up. So we are now on to the final card, and I felt like the best way I could use as many of my leftover die cuts as possible was to create a slimline. So that is what I'm doing here. I die cut a watercolor paper. I think this is Canson XL from a Trinity Stamp Stitch Rectangle die. And I like watercolor paper with my ink blending. The ink actually kind of sits on top of the watercolor paper. It doesn't fully absorb, so it makes it easier to blend between colors. So I would definitely, if you are new to ink blending and you are having trouble blending on regular cardstock, I would recommend trying watercolor paper. That's definitely how I taught myself. I like to use Nina as well because it is a true bright white, so I feel like the colors pop even more. But whenever I am working with three colors that are clearly different, like these three, like they're not in the same color family, I do opt to go with my watercolor paper. And it just makes the blending a lot easier. And I will say I used to never ink blend. I always had distress inks, but I didn't get into ink blending until the Picket Fence Studio blender brushes came out. I just had a really hard time using the Tim Holtz blenders with the distress ink. So that's another tip if you're new to ink blending. I would recommend starting out with the makeup brushes or these Picket Fence Studio brushes. And honestly, a whole bunch of companies have their own now, so any of them would work fine. I went ahead and added some water splatters to my background, and now I'm going to start arranging my different die cuts. And this layout is very similar to last week's card, except I changed up the images. I decided to go with these gnomes. I changed up the color blends in the background. So I thought about doing the exact same thing where I lined up all the images on one row, but I just felt like they were too short, and especially next to that tall gnome, it just didn't feel proportionate to me. So I did play around with this a lot off camera, and I ended up to the conclusion of adding a stitched hillside to the bottom. And I cut this from a Trinity stamp border die from some gray cardstock, and I wanted to incorporate that blue color, which I don't remember the three colors I used, but I will have them listed down below. I just added a little bit of that towards the bottom. And I felt like this hill helped ground the images better. And this way I could also scatter them, like, I guess, on different levels of the panel, so they're not all just on one straight line. And so I fiddled around with this for quite a while, and if I left all that footage in, it would have added at least another 3 minutes to the video because I really struggled with it, but eventually I found something I liked, and I'm going to go ahead and attach everything down now. As usual, some of these elements are popped up with foam tape, and then others are glued directly onto the panel with art glitter glue. Now, when I ran that banner die, or that banner stamp through my scan and cut, I had two banners, and for one of the banners it cut perfectly, and then the second one only cut the center portion for some reason. I guess it didn't scan the entire thing, but I was fine with that because I was able to pop up that centerpiece on top of the one that cut out fully, and it just added some extra dimension, and I thought it looked pretty cool. So here you can see I used those brown pumpkin mugs, and I went with those yellowy pumpkins, and I think this is a really cool fall card. It's not your traditional orange, yellow, red scheme. I do like the darker blues and greens. So if I had to pick a favorite card out of the three, it would probably be this one. And I think this is a cute card you can give to a guy as well. So I did pop up that gray hillside in the back, and I wanted to pop up my gnomes, so on some of the areas I'll have to double up on the foam tape where it overlaps onto that ink blended panel. I want everything to be completely level. For this pumpkin cluster, I'm just going to add one layer of foam tape. It's not going to overlap, so I don't have to do 2 layers. But I did have to add 2 layers to that baby gnome. So I'm going to remove all of the backing pieces, and then I can work on my sentiment. And from the Fall Gnome stamp set, there is a sentiment that says, "I'm here for you, no matter what." And both of them are designed to fit inside this banner. So I'll go ahead and stamp out "I'm here for you." And then on the inside, I will add the "no matter what." So like I said, I stamped it onto that center portion of that banner, and I popped it up over that one that cut out perfectly. And I thought that looked so cool. It was kind of a happy accident, and I would definitely do that again, intentionally this time. So to incorporate that gray from the stitch hillside, I just added a gray stitch scallop rectangle to the back of this panel. Then I will adhere it onto my card base. The card bases I use for my slimlines are 3 3/4 inches by 8 3/4 inches. And now I'm going to finish off the sentiment by stamping it on the inside. And I'll even stamp out that banner. And you can definitely color this in, but I am using VersaFine because I love VersaFine with sentiments, so I did have to let that dry before I colored it. So that's going to complete my final card. I'm going to go ahead and show you all 3 cards I created using the 3 new fall stamp sets from the Not Too Shabby release. I had a lot of fun working with these stamps. I was super inspired, and it definitely got me started into fall crafting and Halloween. Ooh, Halloween is next. I should have that video posted sometime next week, and I will be using that critter costume party, which was a really cute set as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. By the way, if you like these 3 cards, I do have them available at my Etsy shop. Here are the envelopes I use for my slimline cards. I use Trinity stamp envelopes. I will have them linked down below as well. So thanks again so much for watching. If you haven't yet already, please subscribe to my channel. And otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Bye!